And welcome back, everyone. So in this one, I'll draw an arm in a supinated position. And so supination is when the palm is facing up or the thumbs are pointed away from the body. And pronation is when the palms are facing down. So at first I start with a sketch and just try to work out the forms. I'm dropping in some wrapping lines to kind of check the volume in the forms. And about here I realized, this feels a little too stiff. So I first tried to adjust the hand. I actually didn't like the way the hand was drawn. A lot of times I will draw hands 2-3 times. And so I start to like the look of the hand here more, but I didn't like the fact that, again, it was too straight. Then I realized the forearm is too straight. So this is another common mistake that I see in other people's work, and obviously even in my own, is that if you draw anything past each connection point overly straight to the previous segment of the body, it generally just stifles it. It takes some of the gesture out of it. So it's sort of a simple thing to be aware of, that just by simply moving those points of articulation, we'll call them, and adjusting that a little bit or sometimes a lot, that you can get a lot more of a dynamic expression to the body. So now I'm ready to clean this up and drop in the shapes of shadows. So for this particular one, I'm doing a dual light source, and so that's why you see those sort of oval-like shapes on the bottom left of like the bicep, tricep, and the flexors. And I'm essentially leaving those areas open so that I can render with some more line work to give a bit of bounce light or a dual light source. So I generally try to render those differently. I didn't do as much of that here. I did go with a very thin kind of line work. You'll see that here in a bit, which I don't recommend. So generally, I'll play around with different varying levels and degrees of thicknesses because I'm trying to get different intensities on the work, right? So if I go with a nice thick heavy rendering, it looks very different than tiny little thin lines. Likewise, if I do very specific cross hatching or very focused cross hatching of like certain degrees and angles, we'll say 45s, versus just scribbling them all different directions. So there's so many ways that you could look at cross hatching. I typically go for something a little bit more clean, but I do at least play around with line variation. The only bad thing to that is when you use very thin lines, it takes longer to render, and then also they're probably not going to reduce as well. So if you are thinking about print reduction, which in comics you generally are, right, especially if you work traditionally, you have to be very concerned with, what's this going to look like when I shrink it down? So entirely too thin of lines, will just wash away. So you got to be careful of that. That's why a lot of people will use a brush and, or just, use thicker pens in general. When I had inked comics at the start, I used a tech pen and it was far too thin and it really hurt the first couple books I did. I just didn't know any better. And then by the next book, I was using brush pens and it looked much, much better. So again, be aware of that. And like I said, the difference in time generally is a big factor. Now, if you're going for a larger piece of art, cover piece, or maybe it's for a poster or something like that, then these tiny little thin lines can look great because people will really be able to walk up and observe them. But if not, it could be just, waste of time. Now, I'll be honest, I absolutely love rendering. So I could sit here all day long and do this. It doesn't bother me. But again, it is good to be aware of where you're at on the clock. And that's really all there is to it. I'll clean up the top sketch for you so that you can see it with the color code, and keep in mind that the flexors are a little bit off. So I'm just trying to simplify the muscle groups for you, show you the general form and grouped muscles, okay, the flexors, extensors, bicep, deltoid, but it's not specific to the way they really are. Again, this is a generalization or an oversimplification to show you how sometimes just paying attention to the bulk forms can simplify the process for most artists. So I hope this video has been informative for you. I'd love to know what you think. Keep in mind, I've got course content on figure drawing, anatomy, how to draw heads. I'll link those in the description box below. As always, thank you so much for watching the channel. Good luck with your art, and bye for now.